right, everybody, welcome to the presentation. Thank you so much for being here. Happy Friday to you. Happy Friday, wherever you are in this world. Hopefully you're having a good Friday. Hopefully it is. Talking to some friends there just on TikTok before we went live. Well, here we are. It is Friday. So I tell you what, today, for those of you who are wondering, today is Paranormal Fridays. So this is the one time of the week, thank you, where we dedicate our shows to the paranormal. And that's what tonight is about. So thank you guys. So before we get into the presentation, let's get into the business aspect of it. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to make sure, don't forget, guys, if you love the paranormal as much as I do, then go to KGRAD as in dog, B as in bicycle.com, KGRADB.com. And I want you to subscribe because you're going to get 30% off your subscription, but put Bishop as your promo code. Now, they have all kinds of very, very cool paranormal shows. This show airs there. Matter of fact, we're airing right now on KGRDB Radio. So if you go to that site, they have, I'm telling you, they have shows from so many people that's been in the paranormal for a long time. So if you love the paranormal like I do, KGRADB.com. But again, don't forget, put Bishop as your promo code. It's going to save you some money. Why not? And also, if you want to go to my website, it's very simple. BishopJamesLong.com. There it is, BishopJamesLong, LONG.com. Now, if you want to take free classes, we have them for free. So here's what you need to do. Just go to BishopJamesLong.com and click on the class link. And if you click on that class link, it's going to take you to the site on the web, obviously the page, and you can see the free classes that I'm offering. 4 classes: angelology, demonology, paranormal studies, and genealogy. You learn them all, and it's absolutely free. You learn at your own pace. It's on a Facebook private group, and you have the links right there. And also on that page, we do ask you, please consider donating something to the church. We don't get paid as clergy, so. Just, if you could donate a little something, if you can't, that's okay. Just keep us in your thoughts and prayers. But if you're able to, please donate whatever you can, and you'll see that link there. Now, all the funds go to our abbot, Tommy, and he deals with all the funds and the church funds. And then, of course, there is the church website. So if you want to know about the church, usocc.org. Okay, that's the church's website. Now, not yet. So. USOCC, sorry, I lost my track. USOCC.org. Now, next year, we are going to have a retreat. And our clergy are not paid, so we have to pay for our retreat. So if you would please go to USOCC.org, click on the retreat button, and you will see 2 of our clergy members. They need assistance because they're flying in. So if you can, please consider helping. They would appreciate that. So would I. Thank you, Father Mark, Father Sean, because they have to fly in and they have to pay for the retreat. That's expensive. So please go to usocc.org, click on the retreat button, and you can donate to either one or both. And again, we would appreciate that, and they would too. So thank you guys for doing that. I know several of you have already done that, and I truly am so appreciative. A couple of things. Now, for those of you who are watching on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, KGRDB Radio, many times you will hear me say, thank you. I'm talking to my friends there on TikTok. So TikTok, my friends there offer, gifts to the ministry, so they'll offer gifts on TikTok. So I say thank you. Obviously, that's courtesy, as I should. So if you hear me say that, you're like, who is he talking to? I promise you, it's not a ghost. It's my friends there on TikTok. So thank you very much. So someone just did that. So I appreciate that. Now, my friends on TikTok, occasionally I will miss someone giving a gift, and I apologize if I don't say thank you. I promise you, it's not because I'm being a jerk. Thank you. It's because I have 2 computers that I run the show on. This computer here, and this computer over here with you guys. So sometimes I can't see it because I'm focused on my notes, and so you guys understand. And already we just started. We have 15,000 likes on TikTok. You guys are amazing. So please do me a favor. Like TikTok. Keep liking. Like. That way we can get into people's algorithm and they can come on over and listen and enjoy the show. So we appreciate that. For those of you who are liking and sharing, I do sincerely appreciate that very, very much. And for those of you offering gifts, Thank you as well. And for the subscribers, thank you. I'm trying to do something special for the subscribers. I need some help trying to come up with some idea of, here's what we normally do. So for the first hour, I always have it subscriber chat only. And that is the reason is I do that is because it kind of get rid of the trolls. That's how we do it. And then we open it up for everybody on the second hour. So let me let you guys know, if you've never been here before, the schedule is as follows. Sundays and Wednesdays, it's strictly Bible study. And we have that at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, okay? On Friday, 7 p.m., that's the only show we start at 7 p.m. Eastern, is the Paranormal Show. And I know a lot of people are asking me, say, Bishop, can you start a little early? Because on the West Coast, it's awfully, it's 4 o'clock. Well, right now, we just can't because of the schedule. Right now with KGRDB, we just can't. So that's 7 p.m. Eastern. And then Saturday, so tomorrow we have our open mic show. And from 8 to 8:30, we just kind of goof off, tell jokes. Miss Wilma and Miss Judy Ann and myself, we're just having fun, just for the first 30 minutes. And then I open it up for questions, whatever you want to talk about. Okay? So that's how we operate on TikTok. So I am going to go ahead and let me fix this because I am going to put subscriber chat only on right now. Remember, don't get angry, folks. I'm going to open it up for everybody at 9 p.m. 8 p.m. Even I get 8 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll open it up for everybody. Okay. And one last thing, we have night prayer tonight. We have night prayer Monday through Friday. And I encourage you, please join us. Please join it. It's free. So what you do is just go to usocc.org, scroll all the way down to where you see night prayer. And if you click that link, it takes you to Spreaker. And if you don't know how to chat, just keep on scrolling down and you'll actually see directions. I think it's on that. Let's see. I think I put it on the main page. I did. So just go to usocc.org and you'll see that big old picture that says night prayer. And then right below that, it's instructions on how to chat in night prayer. It's real easy. And it's only on Spreaker, so it's audio only. So please join us. We play music around 9:45 p.m. Eastern. And then at 10 o'clock, 10 p.m. Eastern, that is when we do we start our night prayer. And everyone's invited. Fair enough? Okay. And again, at 8 p.m. Eastern, I'll open it up for everybody on TikTok. But if you can subscribe, please do. We appreciate that. Tonight's topic is this is a topic that's kind of scary. Make no mistake about this. And I think what's frightening about it is that knowing that there are people in this world who are so depraved that they become serial killers. And this is really a frightening situation. We have a history. Unfortunately, I can't bring you guys on because I run the show on 2 different computers, and Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, they won't be able to see or hear you. I might do that tomorrow. I might open that up tomorrow so that I can interact later on. But tonight is a topic that is frightening, and it is serial killers. So let's get into this, because the video that I made is serial killers, possession, mentally ill, or both. Hello there, Willie. Hope you guys are doing okay. And again, for those of you, if you're saying hello, I promise you it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's just because right now, for the first hour, I give a lecture, and I'm focused very much on the lecture. So if I don't say hello, it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's because I'm doing a lecture right now. All right. A serial killer is a person who unalives. I have to be very careful with the words that I use because TikTok will ban you. So I have to be very careful. So a serial killer is a person who unalives 3 or more people over a period of more than 30 days. And there's also a cooling off period time between each unaliving, and whose motivation and killing is largely based on psychological gratification. Now, often there is a sexual element is involved with the killings, and the murderers may have, the unaliving may have attempted or completed in a similar fashion. and the victims may have had something in common, like, for example, occupation, race, appearance, etc. Now, for those, obviously, this presentation is not for kids, because, it's one thing if you talk about ghost stories, but we're talking, well, thank you. We're talking about individuals who actually are currently alive or who have lived and done some pretty terrible things. Now, here's some characteristics from the FBI. Really interesting. Normally, a serial killer is a single white male, many times intelligent. They have employment difficulties, unstable family history, often abandoned by their fathers and raised by their mothers. Again, this is by FBI characteristics of how they have defined. Criminal, psychiatric, and alcoholic histories. There is abuse history, high rates of unaliving themselves. Many times when you're dealing with serial killers, you can have interested in voyeurism, or people who have strange fetishes. They have a history of inappropriate bedwetting. They're fascinated with fires and certainly sadistic activity. Many times they have a history of torturing small animals. So this is profiling. This is directly from the FBI. Some other characteristics that the FBI have, their profile is, many times serial killers psychosis is rarely noted among serial killers, and the diagnosis usually is psychopath. And they suffer from traits within a specific cluster of dysfunctional personality characteristics, and those most commonly associated with antisocial personality disorder or dissocial personality disorder. And psychopaths, they lack empathy and guilt. Many times they're egocentric, they're impulsive, and they do not conform to social, moral, or legal norms. So when I'm talking about empathy, is being able to, thank you, Marie, is being able to, like, empathize with someone who is, or feeling, to feel feelings for someone who is struggling or suffering. Many times with serial killers, that just simply is turned off. They just don't have that, which is real interesting, because we'll talk about a couple people that I watched interviews on that was troubling, to say the least. And they often follow a distinct set of rules which they have created for themselves. What makes sometimes even more frightening is they appear to be normal as far as society norms, and they appear quite charming. It's a mask of sanity. And we know certainly Ted Bundy is one of those individuals. Now, again, this is from the FBI profiling. There are several types of serial killers, which I did not know until I started doing my own research on this. There are two types. There's organized and there's disorganized. So when you're talking about organized serial killer, we're talking about above average intelligence, methodological. I mean, so it's not just something random. There's a method behind it. Many times they will lure victims, maintain control over the crime scene. So they want to absolutely maintain control there. They follow their crimes in the media, and they're usually socially adequate. Ted Bundy is no doubt about falls into this category. Now, there's also what's called disorganized types of serial killers, which that means is those individuals are typically, they have low intelligence, they are impulsive, and they unalive when the opportunity arises. So there's not a whole lot of thinking that goes on in that type of process. They rarely dispose of the body, usually leaving the body where they found it. And many times they're introverted. So those are the two types that you have as far as profiling. You have the organized and disorganized. Here's what's kind of frightening. And again, this is from the FBI information. So for those of you who can do your own research there, this is problematic. Approximately 400 serial killers in the United States in the past century, with anywhere between 2,500 to 3,800 victims. So at any given time, the FBI says that there's usually around 400. And 50 to 300 serial killers are active at any point in time. That is frightening. 50 to 300. And several unalivings have increased over the past, serial unalivings, I'm sorry, have increased over the past 30 years. So 80% of the 400 of the past century have emerged since the 1950. Now that is really odd. And when I 80%, that statistic was truly alarming to me. So let's talk about the motives. What are the motives of individuals, the serial killers? And we'll get into specifics in a moment. There are a couple types as far as motivation. What motivates someone to do this? There is the visionary motive type. What that means is this person is insane or psychotic. They are compelled to unalive by entities such as the devil or even God. So they believe that the devil made them do it, or even God told them to do this. So that's visionary. Then there is mission-oriented type. So that's frightening because it displays no psychosis. So they believe that they need to rid the world of what they consider immoral or unworthy. And often the victims are prostitutes, young women, gay men, etc. So there is some moral element behind their attacks. And then there, of course, the hedonistic. And hedonism basically is if it feels good, do it. So that's what hedonism is all about. So hedonism, it derives actual pleasure from unaliving someone. So there is a lust, there is a thrill, there is a comfort that comes with that. Can you imagine? Think of that. There's a comfort in unaliving someone. But the more I read into this, the more concern that I got. I thought, my goodness, it's brilliant how they break it down. But think about that. The visionary motive type. So God or the devil's telling them to do it. There's the mission-oriented type. So because of ethical beliefs, they've got to get rid of these people because these people are seen as the bottom feeders. And actually, Eileen Wuornos was one of those, I would certainly say, a mission-oriented type. And then there's a hedonistic. So you derive pleasure from unaliving someone. So also some motives, power and control. So you have, and by the way, a serial killer can have multiple motives, but a power and control. So these type of serial killers, the objective is to gain control or the power over the victim. And often these serial killers, they are abused as children, which results in them feeling powerless and completely powerless and inadequate as adults. And many of these serial killers usually they attack their victims to gain control over them, not for there's no sexual gratification there. It's the control and dominate. And then finally, you have medical professionals. Yeah, medical professionals. What I mean by that is these serial killers are often referred to as angels of death, and they are often involved in fraud. So there have been many cases. Thank you. There have been many cases where there was one nurse and even one doctor that went around and did that. We'll talk about those a little later. Some other motives is the lust serial killer. So sex is the primary motive and fantasy. It plays a large role in the unaliving. And so sexual gratification depends on the amount of torture and mutilation. These people, they actually enjoy causing and inflicting physical pain on someone. And there was one serial killer that I listened to his interview, and he talked about he actually got angry because he fall into the lust serial category, if you will. And he was furious because the more he would do these terrible things to this person and they didn't scream as loud, that irritated him. And that actually enraged him. My brain doesn't understand this. And then there's the thrill serial killer. So their primary goal is to inflict pain and create terror in the victims. And the victim, often they're strangers, who the killer may have stalked for a period of time. And these killers can go long periods of time without unaliving anyone. And then of course, there is the comfort or profit serial killer. So in other words, material gain, extravagant lifestyles are primary motives. And certainly I would say Aileen Wuornos fell into this category as well, because she unalived 7 men and then of course took their car. So in this case, there was material gain for why she did this. And by the way, which is really interesting, the comfort or the profit gain, the female serial killers are primarily fall in this category. Isn't it interesting? That's very interesting. And again, this is from the FBI. So lust serial killers. And again, this is not for kids. So this is an intense conversation about serial killers, obviously. So lust serial killers is the commission of a sexual unaliving. And it is a distinct subcategory. And for this unaliving, in which the offender searches for satisfaction by fulfilling their lustful desires. And commonly, by the way, this type of crime is manifested either by unaliving someone during sexual relations and then mutilating, obviously, certain organs. So Jeffrey Dahmer fell into that category. And mutilation of the victims may include displacement of certain body parts. Again, I have to be very careful with this. There is the fantasy system of lust serial killer. So common themes found within these fantasies is the presence of power or domination, revenge. So lust unalivings transform their fantasies into even predatory criminal behavior. And when you look at lust serial killers' early childhood, many times there's a notion of a lost childhood, and or indicated a traumatic pre-adolescent event, and lack of structure and support from the home environment. And researchers specifically indicate that sexual unaliving serial killers are created within early childhood development, particularly before the age of 5. And that is crazy. That's a problem. And we can go further into that conversation, but again, you have to be real careful about how you, because of there's so many issues with TikTok and even Facebook and YouTube. So I'm being very careful with my words. So let's talk about 7 psychological phases and cyber world issues. And then we're going to get into specific serial killers and their information about it. And this is by a Delta Group. And it's a really fascinating article. It says in 1988, psychologist Joel Norris, after 500 interviews, revealed his work based on the fact that serial killers undergo 7 psychological stages. And some of these phases, it shifted to activities in the cyber world. While our cyber world and kinetic world are tangled together like ives, this began to make it difficult to detect a potential criminal in the early phase. So according to the study, what phase do you think serial killers go through? Well, first you have the aura phase. The aura phase. What that means is in the aura phase, the person begins to put a distance between himself and social relations. To a certain extent, he begins to drift away from reality, and sometimes the situation can go even unnoticed by family and friends, and continues on for unpredictable short or long period of time. And fantastic thoughts begin to gain weight there. In most cases, these thoughts manifest themselves as violent adult thoughts or violent fantasies. And again, in the person, the use of substance is in this process may intensify. In Jeffrey Dahmer's case, alcohol. Then you have the trolling phase. So this phase usually involves the process of forming an idea about the space of a potential victim. So usually serial killers go through the process of searching for victims where they know or feel comfortable. So however, there's also a tendency to determine where they will actually commit the crime. And then also the after effects of what they're going to do with a corpse. And this quest could take days or even months until the right candidate is found. This is important to note because this talks about premeditation. That's important. Now, could these people be under ordinary demonic activity? No doubt. But at this point, they still have the total control. They are premeditating this act. And then you have the third is the flirting phase. And in the flirting phase, this serial killer is focused on gaining the trust many times of the victim. And typically, this phase is used by more daring, planned, and social developed serial killers. So the killer tries to socialize with the victim sometimes. Once trust is gained, then the killer takes the victim to a quiet and previously planned area. And this could be, the flirting phase can be a very quick. It's not a process where it could take a week, 2 weeks, 2 months, or just a very quick process. And the fourth phase is the capturing phase. So as the name suggests, it is the phase in which the killer fully reveals now their full intentions. And the methods used in the capture phase can again be selected in such a way that the serial killer can enjoy the action more. And then there's the unaliving phase. And at this point, the serial killer actually performs a ritual in his or her own way. And sometimes it can be accompanied by a prolonged torture and necrophilia, while sometimes leading to sudden unaliving. So, like, for example, in Aileen Wuornos' case, so there was a flirting phase that we saw, that we understand, obviously, because she was a prostitute. And then there was the capturing phase. So the capturing phase with her, because she wasn't driving the car, hey, look, why don't we go over here? Let's go over in this area. And she was fully aware of what that area was. And she obviously kind of took them away from the main beaten path. So she knew the place to take them. She had already scouted out the area. And so they got the flirting phase, you got the capturing phase, meaning now you're in this area that's away from everybody. And then, of course, then you have the unaliving phase. And it's pretty from that. I mean, that's terrible, obviously. You know what's going to happen. And then the sixth phase is the totem phase. So what that means is this: after the unaliving and other actions in this phase, the serial killer experiences a huge decline. So he or she kind of wake up from their fantasy. And in fact, these ups and downs are said to be the key driving force that the serial killer has developed in this ritual. And at this point, the reception of souvenirs from the victim is very common. So in other words, they will take something from the victim. Either John Wayne Gacy took sometimes jewelry, license, or something of this nature. And it's common to use memories such as clothing or a piece of body photos. Here's why. And this is really, really uncomfortable. Thank you. They create this fantasy, whatever it is, for whatever their motivation is. So it gives them an extreme high. And then what they do is they take whatever item, a souvenir in this case, from the victim so that they can recall that high. And of course, in Jeffrey Dahmer's case, we know obviously what he took. So he would do this for the sole purpose of reliving that the endorphins would be released again in the brain, and he would relive that high that he had when he performed that terrible act, or any of them for that matter. So yeah, it is. As Dan says, it's a trophy. But as Dahmer said, it's not only is it a trophy, but more importantly, the brain connects that item, that trophy, with the feeling that they experienced at their highest moment when they committed that crime. So the brain then recalls those feelings and they relive that high all over again. Isn't that disturbing? So that's the totem phase. And then there is what's called the depression phase. And so in the final phase, the serial killer tends to decide their next unaliving, because the killer experiences a major emotional breakdown, and the collapse can take days or weeks, even months. A lot of people call this the cooling off period. So sometimes the serial killer compares the way they committed the crime to the unalivings and like in television movies, and they feel dissatisfied because they're like, oh man, I should have done that. And the depression phase is so intense that sometimes serial killers can't even feel the strength to even unalive themselves. And but after a while, the serial killer returns to the fantasy world and starts the next cycle. This motion, by the way, according to the FBI, always leads the serial killer to become more violent and even better these are their words, at their craft. And so they make improvements in their ritual. And this is troubling. In no matter how you look at it. Now there are signs. So there are signs to connect the dots, but sometimes they're not so cut and dry. No pun intended. But sometimes they're not so clear. And this is by Joe Turner. And so it says here, it's tempting to write serial killers off as monstrous, inhuman aberrations and nothing more. Surely there are common signs of a serial killer, right? Well, they're a different breed than you and I, a different species exhibiting traits and raised in conditions that normal people would never be subjected to at times. Surprisingly, he says, this isn't always the case. He says serial killers walk among us every day, going to the same schools, the same places, the same workplaces we do, consuming the same news, forming the same opinions. They hide in plain sight by camouflaging themselves among the general populace as functional human beings. However, a serial killer might let their mask slip on occasion. And you probably heard the terms like psychopathic, sociopathic, narcissistic, psychotic used in relation to psychopathology of serial killers. And it's true that these personality disorders are often common serial killer character traits. This means that they'll exhibit some type of behavior with these disorders. So he says here, think of these psychopathy, if you will, of mixing boards made up of various dials. And so he says, in this article, I'm going to use the term most serial killers rather than all, because all of them, you can't say, yep, all of them are like this. But here, what he says in his study, there are 11 common signs of a serial killer. So the most serial killer traits are lack of empathy. That does seem to be quite often the case for most of them, at least the interviews that I've watched in preparing the show. So they just don't feel the pain and suffering that someone else feels. So, like, for example, you and I, if we see someone suffering, most of us, I would think, you feel sad, you feel bad for that person. But they don't. Just imagine that. See, I can't, my brain doesn't understand that, which is good. Also, there's a lack of remorse. So it was really problematic in some of the things that John Wayne Gacy had said in one of his interviews. And he said, yeah, I would just, I would bury them under my crawl space and move on, do something else. And the guy says, well, you wouldn't have any remorse? He said, no, why would I? I don't have any more connection with them. Just move on. Go about your day. And so there's a lack of remorse. Many times they're impulsive, but not all the time. They have a grandiose ideology of them, certainly of themselves. And we know Ted Bundy did. Although Ted Bundy was intelligent, but he had a huge, obviously, his ego was massive. Narcissistic. Superficial charm. John Wayne Gacy had not only Gacy, but also Ted Bundy. Gacy had an incredible charm. People don't know that he was actually one of the higher ups in Chicago in the Democrat Party. As a matter of fact, he even got a picture with and even met Carter, President Carter's wife at the time. So he was, people liked him. He was a clown. He did clowning for kids. He was just one of those people. So he had this superficial charm about him, as well as Ted Bundy. but they also are very manipulative. They have an addictive personality. There's a lust for power, sensation seeking, and some other things, of course, as well. So he says, let's take a look at each of these behavioral issues. So a lack of empathy. So one of the most common characteristics of a serial killer is a lack of emotional depth. So in particular, empathy. It's impossible to be empathic towards someone and still carry out premeditated homicide on them. So this trait is common in both sociopaths and psychopaths, and therefore present in the majority of serial killers. And interestingly, this isn't to say that a serial killer will lack empathy for absolutely everything and everyone, which that's really interesting, because even Gacy said he was very, very devoted and devoted to his family. But when it comes to other people, when it comes to these people that he had, it's like, just move on. And it's completely possible for a serial killer to show empathy towards another human being, although that human being rarely becomes one of their victims. So they know how to turn it on and off. And a number of studies have shown that serial killers will be fully aware of the victim's distress. They just don't feel it. They don't feel it themselves. For example, there have been a number of serial killers throughout the years who actually adored their pets. Dennis Nelson, John Wayne Gacy, and Harold Shipman. They were all dog lovers. The most bizarre entry in this category may be Jeffrey Dahmer, who actually, he found dead animals in his street, but yet he would never ever hurt his own dog, which is his own dog spaniel, which is Frisky. But yet Dahmer did have other animals and did hurt them. But when it comes to Frisky, it was hands off. There's a lack of remorse. So this goes hand in hand with empathy. So once again, a serial killer will rarely feel remorse for the victims. And if they did, they wouldn't have earned themselves serial in the prefix. So many serial killers have vocally opposed this trait, with some claiming that they learned to feel remorse after a significant time has passed. I don't buy that. I just simply don't buy that. Then impulsiveness. And this is one both in yes and no. Many serial killers over the years have said, I wanted to stop, but I just couldn't. Dennis Nilsen said that he didn't want to unalive anybody, but he had no other choice. And even Dahmer had said many times he just couldn't stop. He tried and tried and tried. He tried other things, even going to the store and getting a mannequin, thinking that perhaps maybe that would fulfill these desires that he had. And he said it just didn't stop. Eileen Wuornos, a female serial killer who was a prostitute, impulsively killed many of her clients while in their car. But again, many of them were disorganized. So grandiose, this grandiose idea. Most serial killers love to boast of their accomplishments. A lot of them see themselves as above the law or smarter than everyone else. Well, it's not possession. Because many of these people, that's premeditation. They remember, and we're going to get into that. We're going to get into how we know whether or not we're dealing with someone who is mentally ill versus possessed and things of this nature. Narcissistic. Obviously, the grandiosity goes hand in hand with narcissistic. It's all about them. Superficial charm. Not all serial killers exhibit antisocial behavior. There are many serial killers have been described as charming. By the way, in 1978, there's a charming young man named Rodney Alcala. He won a date after impressing a young bachelorette on the Dating Game TV show. And she thought he was good looking. He was a smooth talker. He had quick wit. And what this poor bachelorette did not know is that Rodney had already unalived 4 women. Yeah, he was on a dating game. It's called the Dating Game TV show. His name is Rodney Alcala. So charisma and charm go hand in hand. Or Ted Bundy. Now, a lot of people thought that he was just wonderful. And they're always, just because someone has this charming doesn't mean they're always attractive. Like, for example, John Wayne Gacy, he wasn't appealing to the eye, but he was likable and pleasant enough to convince young boys to come back with him in his home. There's manipulation, no doubt. And so we talked about how they can manipulate these. They also have addictive personality. So addiction is defined as repetition of behavior despite its harmful consequence. And so, in other words, with a large majority of the population, possess addictive personalities, it's only when these personalities combine with things like emotional shallowness or lack of empathy, that's when you have some dangerous stuff going on. And then the lust of power. I mean, that just that makes sense, especially when you have individuals who are doing it for control. So let's talk about some of the most famous serial killers and a little bit about them and what they did. And this is by Brian Chase. Right. And of course, Gacy he had his job, and he was offering people their. And one thing he said, I'll never forget this. He said, Gacy said, people thought I was just, unaliving these people left and right. He said, it's not like they were altar boys or anything. You see, he's reducing that person's value. He doesn't even see those people as individuals. That's what he actually said. It's not like these people are altar boys. So let's talk a little bit about them. Here's one. Samuel Little. Some of these people I'd never heard of before, but he confirmed victims 50. Suspected victims, listen to this, 93 plus. And from 1970 to 2005 is when he had this crime spree. And he was born in 1940. And he, according to this, he's imprisoned. So Samuel Little is one of the most prolific serial killers in American history. Little was in trouble with the law from an early age. And by 1975, he had been arrested no fewer than 26 times across 11 states, with crimes ranging from fraud to violent attacks. And in the early 1980s, Samuel Little, he beat two separate unaliving charges before being jailed for 2.5 years for attempting to hurt two women. And after he was released from prison, he moved to LA and left a trail of victims in his wake. But he was not caught until 2012. And decades on, developments in DNA evidence allowed police to prove that Little had been involved in a huge number of unaliving. So he was eventually tracked to a homeless shelter in Kentucky. And he was jailed for life in LA after being extradited to California. By the way, in 2018, Little confessed to a catalog of grisly unalivings, most of which involved women that he had unalived. And the FBI confirmed that he had killed he unalived 50 women from 1970 to 2005. And so far linked him to 93 unalivings in total. But listen to this. This is what the FBI thinks. The FBI believes it is suspected that he may have unalived more than 200 people. You know what I would love to do? I think if I had plenty of resources, I would love to go and try to get a sit down with individuals who are serial killers and just talk to them. And from an exorcist perspective, I think that would be fascinating. Dennis Rader, confirmed victims 10. From 1974 to 1991. He was in Kansas. He's imprisoned. And he was called the BTK Strangler. So a seemingly normal husband and a father of two. Dennis Rader was a Cub Scout leader and a president of his church's council. But he had a really well-hidden dark side. Rader first unalived someone in 1974 when he slew a family of 4, including 2 kids, aged 9 and 11. And he went on to unalive 10 people in total. And after his first crimes, he wrote anonymous letters to TV stations taking credit for the unalivings and suggesting nicknames for himself. Grandiose. One nickname stuck, BTK, which stands for blind, or bind. Well, I can't see it. I'm not allowed to because TikTok will ban me. So anyway, you can look that up. So he unalived most of his victims by strangling them using a rope, a belt, or the victim's undergarments. He even took one victim to his church, where he photographed her in explicit positions. Rader would probably have never been caught, by the way, but for his need for attention in 2004 with these murders, unaliving is considered a cold case. He contacted them. See, this is why one of the reasons I hate social media, because of all this woke, all this, all this constant, you can't just speak your mind. You just can't, you have to unalive. And it's so frustrating sometimes with all this constant capping people's, free speech. Good grief. It's hard to do a serial killer conversation without saying certain words. But anyway, he contacted the media and said that he was planning to unalive again. And he also sent a floppy disk of the crime scene details to police, censoring, who were able to trace the disk back to Rader and arrest him at last. By the way, they found out where he worked. And he wrote, get this, he wrote to the police from his computer at the church. And so from the floppy disk, they were able to find out. They did the background, or somehow on the floppy disk, they were able to find out where this was printed off and from the computer. And of course, it had the church. Ted Bundy confirmed victims are 30. And 30 that we know of within 4 years. California, Colorado, Florida, Idaho, Oregon, Utah, Washington. Of course, he was unalived himself by electrocution. Now, Ted Bundy is one of the most notorious and documented serial killers ever. And over a prolific 4-year span in 1970, Bundy killed unalived at least 30 women and performed vile acts on their body. Though he had a somewhat troubled childhood, Bundy grew up to be a handsome, charismatic, and popular law student. His first confirmed unaliving came in 1974 when he started to terrorize female students in Washington. And authorities believe Bundy may have started unaliving as a teenager, though. And he has confirmed victims across many states. He charmed many of his victims before kidnapping them and taking them to remote locations. Remember, that's control. And he would do terrible things to them and eventually unalive them. And he sometimes returned to the scene later to perform horrible acts on them after they had already passed away. He was arrested in 1975 by a traffic officer who saw Bundy acting suspiciously and recognized his distinctive Volkswagen Beetle from a description provided by a surviving victim. A unaliving kit was found in his car, and police linked him to several unalivings. And during his trial, he actually managed to escape jail twice. And the second escape saw Bundy disappear for nearly 6 weeks. And he was eventually, by the way, captured again in Florida, and he tried to flee after assaulting and unaliving 6 more women. So he even served as his own attorney, but he had the electric chair in 1989. Yeah. And one thing is also because he bit one of his victims, and they were able to match his bite marks with a bite on the person. John Wayne Gacy. Confirmed victims, we know 33. I think there's far more than that. Years active, 1972 to 78. He was unalived by the death penalty. And John Wayne Gacy was a notorious serial unaliver who unalived at least 33 young men and teenage boys in 1970s. Gacy was somewhat of a successful owner, a business owner, a family man, and he was liked by neighbors, respected within the community, but he was also obsessed with young boys. I can't bring you on, unfortunately. I wish I could, but I can't because I run the show on 2 different computers. So his first victim was a 16-year-old boy who he picked up at the Chicago bus station in 1972. And it's terrible. He actually described this unaliving as the ultimate thrill. 16-year-old boy. He said it was the ultimate thrill. And over the next 6 years, he unalived more than 30 youngsters. And he owned a construction company and employed many teenage boys and young men, some of whom he did terrible things to. And Gacy also trained to be a clown so that he can volunteer as an entertainer at community events. And when his crimes came to light, he earned the nickname the Killer Clown. And he would then, of course, gain the trust of the victims, give them alcohol, drugs, and handcuffing them and doing terrible things. And by the way, all of Gacy's victims were buried in the crawl space under his home. This is how he just discarded them. He didn't even think about it. That's what he told them. He said, once it's done, it's like, I'm done. Moved on. So he was finally caught, and by police in 1978 was convicted after being deemed mentally fit by psychologists, and he spent 14 years on death row. And here, by the way, I've shown this before. Listen to this. So Gacy painted, and that's how he was able to defend himself, because with the money from the paintings he sold, and he was able to have a defense. People collect his paintings, which I don't understand. And then when they paint, when they take these paintings home, they have activity in their home. So I'll be going to Arkansas Paranormal Expo this month in October. So you can go to Arkansas Paranormal Expo. I think it's .org or .com. So Arkansas Paranormal Expo, and I'll be bringing several of these with me. And these are original. So this is a one picture that he wrote or that he painted, of course, with his signature. This is another picture. And again, people buy this stuff and then they take it home. So these are Gacy's paintings. Probably this one. This is relatively famous. A lot of people know. And I'll have these at the conference. And one of the most popular ones that's requested is this. And he always put like a little blood right here, his own little blood. And of course, the signature is here, Gacy's signature. So people buy this stuff and then they take it home and they want to know why they're having activity. Well, what do you think? So I'll be taking that to the Paranormal Expo at the Arkansas. Jeffrey Dahmer. So there's confirmed victims that we know of 17. From 1978 to 1991. And Ohio and Wisconsin is the location of the crimes. And he was given the nickname the Milwaukee Monster and the Milwaukee Cannibal. So one of the worst serial killers that we know in American history, with particularly disturbing tendencies, was Jeffrey Dahmer. He obviously abused them for sexual gratification, dismembering, even consuming some of the victims. And as a child, Dahmer, he was fascinated with animals that had been ran over, and he had terrible fantasies and abused alcohol. And he unalived for the first time when he was 18, 3 weeks after graduating high school. So what happened is his father and his mom, it was a tumultuous marriage. It was terrible, quite violent. And so his mom just kind of left. His mom just said, I'm done. So technically she was in the house. His father left originally and said, okay, I'm done. I'm out of here. I'm leaving. So he moved out. Then his mom, from my understanding, was not well. At least that's according to Dahmer's father, speaking as far as psychologically well. So she decided to move out. She moved out of the house. And Jeffrey wanted to go with her. And she said, no, you're staying here. You can't go here. You can't go with this. You're 18. Good luck. So she left Dahmer At 18 years old, in his house, by himself, he had nothing. I mean, he had whatever food that was there, that's what he had. And his father he had already moved out. And so he was by himself during this time. And so what happened is, well, we'll talk about that, Francis Murray, in just a second. We'll talk about that. And so he was by himself. And so the first time he unalived someone was when he was 18 years old, 3 weeks after graduating. And he hit a teenage boy with a dumbbell. And he unalived him. And then, of course, he used acid to... I can't sugarcoat. He removed acid. He used acid to remove flesh, and then he crushed the bones to hide the evidence. He did not unalive anybody for almost 10 years later. And in 1987, he embarked on a twisted rampage, luring male victims to his home, and not only but he would meet them a lot of times at bars, and he would go to adult locations for terrible things, and he would drug them and then unalive them. So many times he kept trophies. We talked about that earlier from many of his victims. The skulls or other body parts, which he would consume. And he was caught in 1991 when a would-be victim escaped from his apartment, and then they led him the police back to him. And officers found a huge array of evidence, from pictures that he took to body parts, etc. He admitted his crimes, and he received 16 life sentences, but he was unalived while he was in prison by a fellow inmate in 1994. So that is what happened to Dahmer. Now, I do have a pair of actual Dahmer's glasses that someone collected, and again, they collected it, and activity started happening in their home. They said, okay, we don't want them. So I gotta get off. And he had sold them for legal reasons, like what Gacy did for his defense. But this is a pair of Dahmer's glasses. I don't know why people collect these things. And this is a little note that he wrote to the person, which says, please enjoy my glasses. Respectfully yours, Jeff. So again, these are things that I will be bringing with me when I do the conference. Now, someone had talked about that he was baptized. That is true. But here's what he said, regarding communion. So the communion was, of course, as Catholics, we believe that is the true presence of Christ. Obviously the body, the divinity, the soul, everything that's, and a lot of people get that confused because they think Catholics then participate in cannibalism. So when Jeffrey found out that that communion is, the Catholics believe it is the full divinity, humanity, body of Christ, Jeffrey's exact words were that's something that I can get behind. So many people believe that when he was taking communion, believing, obviously, his brain, comparing communion to the actual physical body, and it would bring these endorphins back into what he used to do by consuming. So a lot of people think that he was abusing the communion, the whole perspective of communion, because he allegedly, and by the way, the individual, the chaplain who used to give communion, stopped doing that once he heard that Jeffrey had said, "Oh, that's something I can," because people were talking about how Catholics believe that's a full divinity, humanity of Christ, the body of Christ. And when he made that comment, that's something that I can get behind. So the chaplain stopped, distributing communion to him because of it. The next one is Randy Kraft. Confirmed victims is 16. Suspected is 67. And from 1971 to 1983. And this was in California, Oregon, Michigan. He is on death row. and he is named as the scorecard unaliver. Stupid. And Randy Kraft is a serial killer who kidnapped and did terrible things, unalived more than 60 boys and young men before just dumping them off on California highways. So the intelligent Kraft worked and studied in Orange County after being discharged from the U.S. Air Force for informing superiors that he was LGBT, and he was first suspected of assaulting a young teen in 1970 before unaliving the first in 1971. And Kraft picked up many of his victims on the side of the road, luring them into his car. See, at that time in the 70s, it was very common for people to hitchhike. And he would lure them into the car with the offer of a ride or drugs or something of this nature. And he used booze and tranquilizers to incapacitate his victims before doing what he did. And so, again, they 60 plus. And he denies all crimes, of course. But he was found guilty of 16 in 1989. Yeah, it's crazy. Now you're talking about there's so many. Of course, let's get into Richard Ramirez first, and then we'll get to that. Yeah, David Berkowitz. Richard Ramirez, this guy is, if you know anything about Richard Ramirez, have you ever seen him? He just, of course, he's no longer alive, but he just looked evil. He looked evil, and he was evil. And thank you very much for the 95,000 likes, guys. So Richard Ramirez had 14 victims from 1984 to 1985. And this is California. He was known as the Night Stalker, terrified people in that area, terrified. People were really, truly afraid. One of the most notorious serial killers of all time, Richard Ramirez. He broke into the homes of his victims at night. He spread fear through LA and San Francisco. And he referred to in the media as the Night Stalker. Ramirez started doing drugs as a youngster. He was heavily influenced by his cousin, who shared pictures and stories of people that he unalived and did terrible things while in Vietnam. And in 1984, Ramirez claimed his first victim, a 9-year-old. What a thug. I mean, seriously, what a thug. And then people, well, here's what bothers me about sometimes society. There's people who props these pathetic, disgusting human beings up as role models or cool or something of this nature. This is a terrible human being. 9-year-old, terrible. He's exactly where he is right now, where he needs to be. Or I don't know. Maybe what he did was barbaric. And soon afterward, he started his spree of home invasion. And he would pick his targets at random, by the way. And he used different weapons to do this. And many times he would unalive people while they were asleep. And even purposely waking them up, just so that he can get the thrill of doing that. And the police finally identified Ramirez from evidence found at the crime scenes, and they released his picture to the media. And Ramirez was cornered by a group of residents that recognized him from the newspaper pictures and beat him up. Now, he wasn't too tough then, was he? What a piece of crap. Seriously, I mean, people propping somebody like this up, no. There's a special place in hell for people like that. Anyway, he claimed to be a Satanist. Was convicted. He was sentenced to die, and he was on death row for 23 years. We can't judge, no matter how we feel, because we can't know his entire story. His entire story is that he killed kids, 14 victims, and he boasted about it. I'm sorry, but that I disagree with. I mean, there's this. We can judge. These people are not good people. These people have unalived children. So I think, it's just disgusting. Anyway, of course, we have the Zodiac Killer. We should know that. I'm trying to find some other ones. This is really crazy. Do you know Albert Fish? Yeah, I agree, Francis Marie. Do you know Albert Fish? Folks, confirmed victims 3, suspected victims 100 plus. So Hamilton Howard Fish, known as Albert Fish, was highly disturbed serial killer who committed a series of brutal crimes in New York. Fish spent some of his childhood in an orphanage and blamed his later behavior on the abuse he suffered there. And when he was 20, he moved to New York City, started working as a prostitute. And at the time, Fish also started attacking young boys and developed an obsession with doing terrible things and consuming. Albert Fish claimed to have unalived more than 100 people, though police only have linked him conclusively to 5 with physical evidence. And he was said to target victims who are mentally handicapped, who he said would not, and this is his, listen to this. His victims primarily were mentally handicapped, and they asked him why. And he said, oh, thank you very much. Oh, please. And he said, because they would not be missed. And by the way, he also suffered from psychosis. Remember, we talked about he claiming he was doing God's work. So we talked about those people that sometimes have this impression with God. Yeah, it's terrible, terrible. And you were talking about David Berkowitz. David Berkowitz that you were referring to, the known victims were 7. Well, let me open it up because I told everybody that I would. So there you go, TikTok, I'll open it for everybody. So confirmed victims are 7 from 1976 to 1977. He is currently imprisoned. He's known as the Son of Sam. Yep. And he was a serial killer who gunned down a string of victims and spread fear through New York City in the 1970s. And postal worker Berkowitz was obsessed with starting fires as a child before moving on to violent crimes. Hello. Berkowitz messed up his first unaliving attempt when he tried to hurt people on 1975 on Christmas Eve. And after his initial failure, Berkowitz went on a rampage through New York where he used a certain weapon. And he typically targeted pairs of people sitting together, usually in parked cars. And he unalived 7 people in total. And then, of course, leaving others with wounds. And he did have a particular type, women with long, dark hair. So many women actually changed their look to avoid being targeted. That's how many people were afraid at that time. And it left New York in a state of panic. And at one crime scene, Berkowitz left a letter for police referring to him as the Son of Sam. Now, of course, he talks about how he was the certain dogs. He'd have conversations with animals or something. It was really, really strange. Really, really strange. But there are so many more. My gosh, I could do a 3-hour presentation on this alone, just on this. Now, one thing that's really interesting is Charlie Manson. Oh, you work with psychopaths, Wendy? Well, I tell you what, I think it would be fascinating to sit down with somebody who falls in this category and just try to understand their perspective. Now, Charlie Manson, interesting, confirmed victims 9, but from 1968 to 1969, he's no longer alive. But Charlie Manson, infamous cult leader, who encouraged his followers to commit a series of unalivings in 1960s. Charlie Manson always said, I never unalived anybody. So Manson is unlike most other serial killers in that he did not unalive the victims himself. But he was convicted on several counts of first degree for their role in the unalivings. And a singer-songwriter who once wrote a song for the Beach Boys. Did you know that, guys? I did not know this, but he was a singer-songwriter. He wrote a song for the Beach Boys. Manson spent many of his early years in and out of prison. And after his release in 1967, Manson started to attract followers and created a California commune. See, I didn't know that. And some followers believed Manson was a manifestation of Jesus and devoted themselves to him. and he and his band of acolytes were later referred to as the Manson family. So the group was responsible for a series of unalivings, including a high-profile unaliving of pregnant actress Sharon Tate. And it's believed that the family unalived on Manson's instructions. Was it a freaky song? Yeah, I didn't know that. When I read this, I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. And by the way, did you know that there is a site that gives you? Richard Ramirez. He was in every there. This is crazy. I didn't know this, but there is a serial killer in every state. Do you want to know who they are? If you, I'll tell you if you want me to, or I can answer demon questions. But the Iceman. He was, he was just, there's something, Richard Kuklinski. There's a great movie. If you guys have not seen it, it's called The Iceman, I believe. Shannon somebody, who is that? I think he's a phenomenal actor. Love this actor. He's really good. Michael Shannon. He played Kuklinski. And I'm going to tell you something, guys. If you have not seen that, it's called The Iceman, 2012. He did a great job. I mean, yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about per state. Let's go with Alabama. Alabama. If you don't know Alabama, it's Paul John Knowles. Yeah, Paul John Knowles, the Casanova killer. You can check that. I'm not going to read all of them. In Arkansas, the Phantom Killer. It's a state line community of Texarkana, or Arkansas, was sent into widespread panic during the spring of 1946 when every 3 weeks to the day, a seemingly random couple was unalived in their car. So that is in Arkansas, the Phantom Killer. You can look that up. In Alaska, I'll get there. In Alaska, Robert Hansen, aka the Butcher Baker. So he lured prostitutes, and he transported them in a cabin to remote Alaskan wilderness. Arizona, there's Jacob Kell, Kell, and he was known as the Arizona Ripper. Yeah. Okay, 1 second. There's a question. I didn't get that. Yeah, send me on TikTok or something like that. Psychopath and sociopath. Well, at least from my studies, I'm not an expert on this at all. But the term psychopath and sociopath, they're used many times interchangeably, but there are some distinctions. So psychopathy it's considered to be like a more severe form of antisocial personality disorder. It's characterized by a lack of empathy. Thank you. A lack of empathy, or lack of remorse, and even guilt. And they're very manipulative and deceitful. They're typically psychopaths are typically more calculating, and they can appear to be very charming. So certainly Ted Bundy, and even John Wayne Gacy. Sociopath, on the other hand, it's often seen like as a milder form of antisocial personality disorder, and they still engage in harmful behaviors, but they're more impulsive and prone to like outbursts of anger, or even violence, and they can have a greater capacity for forming attachments to others, even in a superficial way. So that's the really difference between the two. Psychopaths, Ted Bundy would certainly be a psychopath, whereas a sociopath is more of anger, doing it out of anger or something of this nature. So in Arizona, Jacob Kell. In California, well, we just talked about California, but there's plenty of them. But what's his face? That idiot that we just talked about. He unalived a 9-year-old. In Colorado, Vincent Groves. Vincent Groves, Groves, from 1978 to 1988. So you can check him out. In Connecticut, Michael Bruce Ross. He was also known as the Roadside Strangler. Michael Bruce Ross. In Delaware, Stephen Brian Pennell. Yeah, Ramirez. So in Delaware, if you want to look your own state up, these are the people. Stephen Brian Pennell, Pennell. The District of Columbia, the Freeway Phantom. Thank you. So that's you can check that out. 1971, 1972, the Freeway Phantom. And of course, Ed Gein. Yeah. Florida was Ted Bundy, which we talked about him. Georgia, Wayne Williams. He actually had, there's a 28 random unalivings in 1979 to 1981. But he's still in prison, I believe. So Wayne Williams. In Hawaii, the Honolulu Strangler. And so I believe 5 victims there. In Idaho, Lyda Southard. And that was obviously a female. In Illinois would be John Wayne Gacy. We know that. We talked about him. In Indiana, Larry Eiler. There's also, I forgot his name. I went to his house. Let's see. I can't remember the store. There he is. That's it. This was like 15 years ago. We were the very first people ever to investigate Herbert Baumeister's house. And that was really eerie. That was eerie. So we were the only team ever in the entire world we were the very first ones to actually go down and investigate his home. But Herb Baumeister, what he would do is he had a family. It's a big, beautiful home. And then he had a pool. It wasn't a big pool, but it was a pool in the basement. And so he would lure young men to this pool, and then he would drug them and then do terrible things. And so you need to, of course, bury them on the property. But that was, I'm telling you, that's a beautiful home. But when I was there, especially in that pool area, man, that was eerie. It was just eerie. So yeah, Herbert Baumeister. It's Baum. Yeah, Fox Hollow Farm. Baumeister. But yeah, that was the very first one to ever. Yeah, and of course, Eileen Wuornos was in Florida as well. In Iowa, the Vasilla Axe murderer. In Kansas, Dennis Rader. Kentucky, Donald Harvey. Louisiana, Clementine Barnabet. In Maine, Arthur Shawcross. Maryland, Melvin Rees. In Massachusetts, the Boston Strangler. Michigan, Carl Watts. I'll get to your questions. I'm just trying to get through because people want me to tell. What about this state? What about that state? So just easier just to read all of them really quick. Michigan, Carl Watts. Minnesota, Bill Glaze. Mississippi, Glenn Rogers. Missouri, Charles Ray Hatcher. Montana, David Meyerhofer. In Nebraska, John Yobert. Nevada is Carol Cole. New Hampshire, Christopher Wilder, also known as the Beauty Queen Killer. And New Mexico, Charles Kennedy. New Jersey, Richard Cottenham. New York was David Berkowitz. We talked about the Son of Sam. North Carolina, Henry Lewis Wallace. North Dakota is Harvey Carignan. Ohio, the Cleveland Torso Murderer. Good grief. Oklahoma, Nanny Doss, the Giggling Granny. 11 victims. Yeah, if you want to check that out, Nanny, Nannie Doss. Oregon is Randall Woodfield. Pennsylvania, Gary Heidnick. Rhode Island is Craig Price. South Carolina, Donald Henry Gaskins. And South Dakota is Jake Bird. Tennessee is Micah and Wiley Harp. Texas, Dean Corll. Utah, Robert Joseph Silveria. In Vermont, the Connecticut River Valley Killer. Virginia, the Colonial Parkway Killer. Washington, Gary Ridgway. West Virginia is Joseph Paul Franklin. Wisconsin, we talked Jeffrey Dahmer. Wyoming, Keith Hunter Jesperson, which, by the way, known as the Happy Face Killer. Yeah, that's a different person. All these people just really, I don't understand. It's crazy. It's just here's an interesting facts that you guys might be interested in knowing. Many people believe that serial killers are a thing of the past, but actually, but there are 16,214 recorded unalivings in the United States just in 2018 alone. And 40% of all murder cases are currently unsolved. In fact, some experts believe that the number of serial killers operating today may actually be on the rise. With the increase in media coverage and general fascination with crime documentaries and TV shows, it's thought that savvy serial killers are now better able to cover their tracks and fool the cops. Well, that's kind of scary if you think about that. Yeah, I just but obviously I couldn't go there. There's a massive, gigantic list. And that's the problem. When I was looking at that, there were so many people. And I thought, I'm not going to be able to get through all this. Yeah, it's terrible. Terrible. But that's, yeah, she's Eileen Wuornos was just another one of those people that was just terrible. Well, just disgusting, disturbing. Yeah, Richard Mallory was the first victim of Eileen Wuornos. And a lot of people believe that he was aggressive or could have been aggressive, but she said so many different things in some of her in some of the interviews. Here's the deal. Do I believe these people are possessed? No, I don't. There was one person that I think there's something happened that I could say, you know what, there's something interesting there, because this is all premeditated. Most of them are all premeditated. They knew exactly what they were doing. See, when you're possessed, you do not have any memory of the stage of possession at all. None. But these people have. They know exactly what they did, what happened. Now, Jeffrey Dahmer did state in one of his interviews that there was one man that he took to a hotel. And this hotel was a nice hotel. And he does not remember the event at all, but that the next morning he woke up and the man that he obviously had a relationship with that night, his chest had been caved in. But he says he does not remember that at all. He has no memory of that whatsoever. But I also think that could have been drug induced, or he was because he was a raging alcoholic. So it's to a point where he could have had what's called lucid interval or temporary insanity. We don't do that here. We're not. You can go do your politics someplace else. We're not interested in politics here. So just this is a Paranormal Friday show, and there's plenty of people who want to argue politics, but that's not here. Not here. But yeah, Eileen Wuornos, it was what she did, terrible. Really, really terrible. No, we'll I made the statement now, so if they do it again, they'll be blocked. I mean, that's just the way it is. Okay. Yeah, she actually was. She was unalived herself. I think she had the death penalty there. So, right. Well, actually, I think that was Exorcist 3. Francis Maria. I think there was. Okay. Oh, okay. Well, then he must have come back. Someone's arguing politics here. It's like, okay, just go away. And always, I think it was Exorcist 3. I think. There was a scene there's one particular scene there. Of course, by the way, if you have not seen the show Dahmer on Netflix, first of all, the actor who played Dahmer, I mean, that just, he did a phenomenal job, and kind of eerie because, oh, you're welcome. Yeah, but normally, Eli, the reasons I do, well, thank you there, Lynn, is because I always, for the first hour, I always have it on to kind of, the trolls just make the trolls go away. So let me look that up. Yeah, it is. It is The Exorcist 3. Yep. So because Dahmer brings a potential victim home and then requires them to watch Exorcist 3. And but there's one particular scene that he really liked, and it kind of got him into this. Remember this ritual that I talked about, that the FBI courts talked about, how they begin this ritual before they commit this act. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. I'm telling you, the Dahmer is scary. The Dahmer is truly, it's intense. It is really. If you've not seen it, I would encourage you to. If you're what fascinates me about serial killers is I can't understand how someone can be, I mean, that broken mentally, meaning how so they can have no empathy whatsoever towards the victim, none. And I don't get it. And even in Eileen Wuornos, in her last interview, the interviewer was talking about Nick. He was talking about you unalive you unalive people. You mean you did this? And she was like, oh well, like, oh well. Like, this is just, but there was nothing. There was no emotion. It was just like pity. Yeah, it's and by the way, if you have not seen the movie Monster, okay, Monster was phenomenal. It is it was not the Disney. No, it's not the Disney. It's I'm telling you, that was really, really fantastic. It was 2003, and man, it was just Charlize Theron. Or you, when I first saw her, I thought, that's not Charlize Theron. I mean, it was amazing. So there were some parts in that, it's like you were like looking at Eileen Wuornos. So if you've not seen this, it's based on Eileen Wuornos, her life, and it's 2003, and it's called Monster. That is a great movie. Yeah, Christina Rocca. And by the way, so Eileen Wuornos had a female lover, and so her female lover basically, when Eileen Wuornos was caught, and obviously there was an undercover, so it was a sting operation to where she went to this biker club, and this she was going to pick up this old man at a bar, but she didn't know that he was an undercover police officer, and then they arrested her, and then of course Eileen Wuornos, her female lover, was scared, and she turned on her, and so it's called Monster. So here you have to understand, people ask me all the time about serial killers, and do I believe they're possessed? What's going on? So for me, it's fascinating to me how the mind works, especially even when you're dealing with exorcism cases, and certainly in cases that are not possession, but they truly think that they are. So that's one of I've even thought about when I was at Loyola, even thinking about majoring in psychology, because to me it's fascinating how the brain works. To people who suffer from these psychosis episodes or psychotic episode, but I don't know. They're very. It's an intense movie. Yeah, no, and Nefarious was a great movie as well. Of course, now that was dealing with possession. But yeah, that's it's called Monster 2003. Yeah, abnormal psychology is just, to me, it's fascinating. So anyway, you might want to check that out if you have not seen it. If that's something that you're interested, well, then that's cool. Yeah, Nefarious was a pretty phenomenal movie. I would say it's very, very accurate as far as Nefarious. That's probably one of the most accurate movies when it comes to demonic possession, because a lot of people think when you're doing the right, yeah, there's screaming and there's yelling and there's vulgarity, but many times in the beginning it's very manipulative, and they try to control the situation, control the environment. They try to use terms what's called prognostication or retrocognition, which retrocognition is the ability to know your sins, not because they can read their mind, is because sins fall under what's called ordinary demonic activity. So that's why exorcists, we always have the sacrament of reconciliation prior to performing the sacred rite. So we remove that ability from the demonic, so they can't tell you your sins in the middle of your rite. So if we're all sinful human beings, and they try to do that to disrupt the rite itself. So that's why we have the sacrament of reconciliation. There's also a term called prognostication, which is the ability to tell your future. Thank you. So in the rite, there is a point where you have to silence the voice, because they just want to constantly try to control, manipulate, distract, and to break, obviously, the ritual from continuing. Yeah, it's not because of they're able to read your mind. It's because when you're dealing with sins fall under what's called ordinary demonic activity. So ordinary demonic activity is when demons will tempt you to sin. And so because there's temptation and you fall into sin, they know your sins. No, they cannot read your mind. Because that really would be all-knowing, and the only being that is truly all-knowing is God. But they do know your sins through ordinary demonic activity. So anyway, yeah, Nefarious was very good on how it tried to control the situation, and not only control the situation, but remember prognostication. So the demon was telling this I think it was a psychologist that before, I can't bring you on, guys, I can't bring you on because remember, I said it earlier, I have two computers running and they won't be able to see or hear you. But so the demon used prognostication in telling you by the time you leave here, you're going to do, commit 3 unalivings. And then retrocognition telling the psychologist their sins. Oh, okay. This is really crazy. Listen to this. Angels, look, guys, angels are not God. The only being that can read your mind is God. See, Gnosticism used to teach that, or it still does. It placed angels even to a deity status, and it even blamed sin on angels or demons in this case. So Gnosticism taught that sin is not because of man's decision or human beings' decision to sin; it's because it falls under demons, and demons are the cause of it. No, it's our choice. So they're not God; they are created beings. But this is by T.K. Randall. Take a look. For those of you who don't know this, listen to this. A mystery as man dies on beach after performing black magic ritual. So a 65-year-old man has been found unalived on a beach in Spain after conducting some sort of strange ritual. The peculiar and disturbing case saw the body of a man being found behind some rocks on La Fosca Beach to the north of Costa Bravo Resort in Palamos, near Girona, Spain this week. So, in a bizarre twist, he was found surrounded by a circle of dead hens that he had seemingly unalived as part of some form of black magic ritual. And his wife, with whom he had rowed prior to the incident, had raised the alarm after she found him unconscious on the ground at around 5 a.m. in the morning. So police investigating the case believe that the man may have passed away from a reaction to a certain substances that he had taken prior to conducting the ritual. There are, however, currently treating this death as a crime, and his family will also not be held accountable for the animals that he unalived. So the true meaning and purpose of the ritual he was conducting, however, remains unclear. Isn't that crazy? I want to. It's certainly, I don't know what kind of ritual that is, but we're not going to get into that. But yeah, that is nuts. By the way, the paranormal sequel, if you have not heard about this, this is, of course, if you don't know, Pet Cemetery prequel, you can check that out. I think it's on Paramount. I think. So if you have not seen in the Paramount, it's the In Between. It's a supernatural thriller. It's already premiering right now. It's already airing. So the film, they were developed by Paramount Players. And have you seen that? Have you guys seen that the new one at the paranormal? I think it's the Pet Cemetery. I have not seen that one, but I don't know, the in between a supernatural thriller to this. I don't know. I might have to look at that. I don't know. Was it any good? Janie says yes. So let me know if you guys liked it. Hello. Okay, so Navy Girl says yes. Okay. I've seen it was disappointed. Okay, wow. Well, thank you there, Apple. So there are some people say yep. There are some people say no. This is crazy. If you have not heard about this, guys, look this up. This is nuts. This is nuts. There's a lot of paranormal. Well, the Paranormal Activity movies, Blumhouse said that's enough. He said we're done. I think Jason Blumhouse said enough of that. But listen to this one. This is by Sarah Gunelli and Eli Sherman. If you have not heard about the Conjuring House, there is some real serious business going on right now, and it is drama. It is drama. So Brian Dinosora, whatever, said he was fired from the house featured in the film The Conjuring after his boss said he was told by its 19th century owner that this person had been stealing money. You heard me right. The current owner said that said that a ghost had been saying that basically he's been stealing money. So the Burrillville, Rhode Island farmhouse, also known as the Old Arnold Estate, has been an international draw for paranormal enthusiasts ever since it was made famous. Well, this person, Dan Serra, I guess, said he worked at the house, which is open to visitors, until current owners, Jacqueline Nunez, fired him abruptly last month. This person said that, what is his first name? Brian. So Brian, who was hired, said that she told him, the new owner of this house, this is kind of crazy. So the new owner of the Conjuring House told him that the spirit of John Arnold, the ghost of John Arnold, who owned the home with his wife Abigail in the 1800s, said Brian stole $3,000. Brian has denied the theft. The owner said, John Arnold, the ghost, told me you'd been stealing money out of the cash box for the past 2 months. Brian said in an interview, showing text messages of the conversation. He says, I literally stopped and I had to correct her, like, John Arnold, one of the original owners? The owner, Nunez, a self-described medium and channel, confirmed she fired Brian and that spirits of the most famous, haunted, and active locations in the world told her that he had been stealing. And Nunez also said that she had been informed of other matters that are untoward from previous staff and even mischievous guests. This is what's going on right now. Did you read this? Yeah, this was at the Conjuring House. It says, it does not matter whether you believe in the paranormal or not, Nunez said in a statement. I and every person is entitled to experiences that bring understanding to the meaning of our lives, including being informed or warned about wicked actors and actions. As far as Brian goes, my experience with him devolved quickly, culminating in his at-will employment termination. The Conjuring film was created for Andrea Perron, who I'm friends with Andrea. She's a great person. Please keep her in your thoughts and prayers. Wrote House of Darkness, House of Light. So, folks, if you want to know what's really about this house, if you really want to know about The Conjuring, here's what you need to do. You got to go get the books. House of Darkness, House of Light. She lived there. She was a kid when this all went down. The book is about the paranormal activity she experienced living in the Arnold estate. Parents said the family was haunted by Bathsheba, a spirit that was unleashed during a seance gone horribly wrong. And so anyway, Brian, who worked as a paramedic before getting hired at the house, recalled his own paranormal experiences, such as hearing voices and footsteps. So he says, yeah, it's paranoid. But this is what's going on. So Brian, has filed a complaint seeking unpaid wages with the Rhode Island Department of Labor and Training, estimating Nunez owes him $9,000 of uncompensated work, and the state agency confirmed it received the complaint. And Nunez said her books catch up the allegations of theft, showing discrepancies between merchandise orders and cash sales. And Nunez also denied owing Brian any money, saying he's been able to made whole when counting the stolen money as part of this compensation. So this person was fired because the owner of the Conjuring House said that a ghost, a previous owner in the 1800s, John Arnold, told her that this Brian guy had stolen $3,000. And by the way, if you guys don't know about this, Jason Hawes from the very popular ghost television shows, as you guys know, has also kind of been involved in this situation. So it has gotten crazy. So if you have not Googled it and you're wanting to know there's a lot of craziness going on behind the scenes. Yeah, so you saw that, Jason Hawes. Yeah, he's talked about it, and so it's it's wow. I'm telling you, it's one of those things. It's one of those things. By the way, so here's a really interesting. Okay, speaking of interesting, this is by the Hype, the Yahoo Lifestyle. Paranormal Activity 2 actress claims that she had relations with a ghost. Speaking to British Morning Show this morning, Natasha Blasek claimed her first experience happened while she was alone in her room. She says, I was in a room by myself. I was at home. So I was laying in bed. And then I felt that something entered the room. She said, I couldn't see anybody. And suddenly I could feel that somebody was obviously doing things they shouldn't do. And she said, I could feel the weight on the person on me. And despite her initial discomfort, she said she decided to relax and it was consensual. So we will just go ahead and put this in the trash. There we go. Here's the deal. I know. People are saying, what? Yeah, folks, you know what? Here's what's so crazy. Here's what's crazy about this. First of all, incubus and succubus does exist. They're very violent, but at first, It does not start as aggressive or violent, and then the person does not stop it. There is no act, an actual act of relations, adult relations. Okay, what it is a manipulation. It's a manipulation of the muscles, and it's very violent. And so, what happens with incubus and succubus is it's not stopped at first. It is welcomed, and that's the invitation that it needs because it's not stopped. So this is it's a very odd situation, but incubus and succubus cases do exist, and they're very violent. So what happens is the moment the person, but it becomes intrusive, and once it becomes intrusive, and the person says, "Stop! That's it! In the name of Christ, I leave me alone," or "I God call upon God," or whatever, then it becomes very violent, and it can be quite dangerous. Thank you, Maria. So what it really is, this is serious stuff. This is serious stuff. So um, this is where the 68-year-old woman that I worked with, she suffered from this for 5 years, and she was in pretty bad shape, really bad shape. So it's not it sounds odd, but the problem is this is not a ghost. See, that's the problem right there with immediate when you look at this the story, the ghost the statement is misleading. And it is actress claims she had sex with a ghost. No, princess, that was not a ghost. What you experienced was a demonic, and that is something that is well. Actually, here's what's Andrew. Here is the problem. Andrew says, "Is it possible for it to be consensual?" And this is the scary part about it: is there are people on social media who will actually send you an incubus and succubus. And I saw that person on TikTok the other day. Honest to God, I was flipping through and I saw this person, this clown, and he was telling people he can send whatever demon your way by whatever ritual, whatever incantation, whatever it is that you want. And there were people who are actually saying, "Well, I want an incubus, I want a succubus." And then he would do the satanic incantation, and this is not a joke. This is no joke. This is not something, it's not a satire. He is 100% devoted into sending people demons if they want it. And the sad part about it is there was over 800 people in his room. 800. And there were people left and right, and I mean, it was nonstop. It was nonstop. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. It was just nonstop, but bringing people up and, "Oh, I want an incubus. I've heard it's so wonderful. It's okay." And then he would do this incantation. Folks, this is the crap that I deal with. And then they contact me and they want me to fix it. So I'm serious. That's what's. I could show you guys. I could show you the screenshots. I would have to take their name out because I don't want to give them advertisement. But here's one that I will say. This is the type of stuff that people are doing. I'm not going to put but this is an art called Unholy Mary. Unholy Mary. This is the crap there you go. It's a painting of Unholy Mary. There it is, folks. Right there. And so when I took that snapshot, I thought, this is. But there are so many pictures that I have right now of people doing the demon stuff. I honest to God, I could do an hour show just on that alone. That's how many people are doing it. That's how many people are doing it. So. But that's the kind of stuff that you deal with. For those of you on Spreaker, I'm going to say goodnight to you guys. I want to remind everybody, don't forget, folks, don't forget. that we are going to have night prayer tonight, and it's at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I would love for you guys to be there. We'd love to have you. We play music around 9:45 p.m. Eastern. Okay, so you go to usocc.org, scroll all the way down, you'll see night prayer, and you'll also scroll down to the very bottom. It shows you how you can chat in the chat room. So we play music around 9:45 p.m., which is about a little less than an hour, about 55 minutes from now. And then we go online to do prayer. It's strictly Spreaker, so it's only audio only. Now, tomorrow we're going to be here at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with myself and Miss Wilma, and Judy Ann will be here. So we have open mic. So we'll be here, chat with you guys. And then, of course, Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard, we have Bible study. So you're all welcome then. So hang tight with me for TikTok. I'll stay with you guys for a little bit longer. Remember, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, KGREDB Radio, Rumble, and Twitch, and wherever else. And, of course, TikTok. Remember, your value does not decrease based on someone's inability or refusal to see your worth. Remember, you're priceless, and don't let any troll convince you or tell you otherwise. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, KGRDB Radio, and YouTube and Rumble, whatever else. Good night. God bless. The Sacred Division has been brought to you by Bishop Long's online paranormal course. Learn demonology, angelology, paranormal studies, and genealogy. It's 100% online, and you learn at your own pace. Please go to www.bishopjameslong.com and click on the paranormal course link.